podcast. It's Andrea. I'm super excited. We've got a jam-packed episode for you this week. You're going to get to meet John Casper. John is the communication coordinator for Winona Area Public Schools in Minnesota. Get a lot of these, Midwest accents today. John has so much to share. He's really been able to take social media to the next level ever since he took over in 2019. You're going to learn some of that success. He's going to talk through getting content from families, tips to getting content from staff, and then a really unique way of dealing with those negative, maybe sometimes negative community gossip groups. So you're not going to want to miss that. That's actually towards the end of the interview, but he's got some really solid advice. You're going to learn why John does well in his role from all of the tips that he shares. I'm very, very excited for you to learn from him. And just quick request, if you love this show and if you want to support this show, I would love for you to share this episode and this podcast with at least one other person in school communications. Okay. That's why we do this show. We want to help schools all around the world, K-12 schools, celebrate what's going on with social media and make it much easier to do with the tips we share. But we want to grow our listener base. And if you're listening to this right now, please do me a favor and share this with someone else. It'll help them. It'll make you feel great because you help them for free. That's awesome. And it'd be a great way to support the show. So let's get started with this week's episode. This week's K-12 PR tip is all about Instagram stories and the fact that guess what? Now in Instagram stories, everybody, no matter how many followers you have the ability to add links to your stories. And stories is a great spot to promote events, right? Because they only live for 24 hours. And now there's a link sticker that you can add to all of your stories so that people can actually click on it and be taken somewhere else to fill out a form or get more information or whatever you want them to do. Maybe visit your website. And so definitely check that out. It has rolled out now. It should be to all accounts. And so Instagram stories, you can now add a link. So I hope that tip helps. Now let's get into our interview with John Casper. Hey, John, welcome to the podcast.
I'm so excited to be here, Andrea. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you, a fellow Minnesotan. So
You betcha.
we're going to feel a little bit of the O's and whatever else. But John, I've known you for a while, but why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners? Tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you got into school communications.
Sure. So I am the communications coordinator for Winona Area Public Schools. We have about 2,500 students and 6 campuses. So a high school, a middle school, an ALC, and 3 elementaries. I took the unusual route, and I say that jokingly. I was a former journalist turned communications professional. I loved my years in journalism, but as it became apparent that profession was not suitable to have a family and my sanity and a social life on top of a profession, I kind of had my eyes to see what else was out there. My wife and I have 2 small kids. We love Winona, so finding moving to a bigger city probably was out of the question. So the opportunities were kind of limited as to what I could do and still stay near the town that we love so much. So when this position became available at the school district, I jumped on it. It was one that I've had my eye on for years. I was able to develop a lot of great relationships with people in the school districts. I mainly covered sports during my years in newspapers, so I knew a lot of the coaches who were all obviously also teachers, and I was really just impressed with the people who worked in the school district. And like I said, when that opportunity became available, I didn't need any nudging really, so I kind of threw my hat in the ring, and I had the support of a lot of people. So I just couldn't be more fortunate that my second mountain, so to speak, in my career is working for a school district, the same school district that I send my kids to. And so I really feel fortunate that this is where I've landed.
Yeah. Yeah, and it you know, it's typically usually two routes, right? They're either like a journalism major or maybe they're a former teacher. Some people go right into it. I just met a young gal that went right into it, but a lot of people don't even know that school communications exists. Um, Now, John, you said that when this position opened, how long ago did you join the school district?
So I joined in the summer of 2019. And so I keep telling
Okay.
people I've been there for 3 years, but really this is, it's been 2 years and 5 months. I mean, it feels like 20 years at times with, what we've had to deal with the last couple of years. But this is my third school year doing it. And so I really haven't had a normal school year from start to finish. But as you know, I'll talk about later. I've really learned a lot from what COVID kind of thrust upon me personally, and in my role for the school district. So that's really it's I'm in year three, but it feels like I've been there for a lot longer.
So there was no one in this role before they hired you, is that right?
There there was, and
Oh, there
the
was.
position is yeah, the position has kind of evolved. And when I say open, I just mean the person who had it took another position elsewhere.
Sure.
This position has kind of evolved, over the last, I guess 5 years really. I found just because people in our role are so good at keeping records, I found a note that the person who had this job did like 10 years ago, and she had a list. I think she was being asked to do a lot of things, and I think she finally reached a breaking point where she said, "This is what I am, and this is what I am not." And a lot of the things that she had in her "This is what I am not" are things that I do right now. So, and that's just like the taking photos of events, publicizing different things of the community. It just is weird how this position has evolved to. It used to be called the publications and promotions coordinator. So they did a lot of like newsletter stuff internally and externally, but really not a whole lot with social media. Not a lot with community engagement. So that's kind of how that has kind of evolved now to being almost a spokesman type role for the districts, a social media manager, and really forging partnerships and engagement with parents and families. Whereas maybe 10, 15 years ago, that really wasn't on the radar of this job, which I found interesting. So the previous
Yeah.
person who held my position kind of changed the nature of the position really to be more of a communications coordinator as opposed to a publications coordinator.
Yeah. And when you think about it, I mean, how different school communications was even 10 years ago, which isn't that long ago, compared to what it is now with how engaged, social media is and what people expect and all of that has all changed. But I really like that what I am and what I am not. I think probably our listeners, that might be a good exercise for you to go through, because especially your position wasn't new, but some people get thrown into a brand new position. And so they're trying to like define it. And sometimes your board is pulling you into, well, you should be editing this kind of document that, and it's like, whoa, 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 like this is a little bit different. So I just want to maybe throw that out as an extra tip, John, that you didn't even know you were going to share. But what you
Absolutely.
are and what you aren't, because with boundaries, right? And we talk a lot about boundaries within our membership group stuff too, is just trying to hold in, okay, this is what I'm responsible for, this is what I'm not. So so
Absolutely. And
tell me.
I think, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. you,
Oh,
you
I was
go.
just going to say, I think a lot of people listening at home are like, I'm not going to create a flyer. I think that was like the one thing that this person did years ago. And I've gotten a few requests for that. And I'm like, I'm really not your person for that. I mean, I can do it, but here's a different way to market your event rather than creating a static flyer that's going to be seen by maybe five people in the entryway of your building. Let's talk about something else. So I think,
Well,
yeah, the roles evolved, and those do and do nots have also evolved.
yeah. Okay, now you brought up another thing. So everybody gets requests for flyers. And you said you've got some ideas of what else you could do. Because sometimes, yes, you need a flyer, like you want to put it up. But what are some of those other suggestions that you have given some folks to maybe promote their events?
Right. So, I mean, I like creating Facebook events. I've been helpful with, having creating that for folks, because that the thing I like about Facebook events, and if your target audience is on Facebook, this is where it's helpful. Is then you get a reminder of that event. You know, the day before, the day of, it gives you a little notification that hey, this event that you were interested in is coming up. You can also put more information on there, I think, than a flyer. You know, you can get like links, you can put other photos, you can have a, if you, depending on your settings, you can have people ask questions about the events too. So we've done that with some of our, you know, back to school playground, like popsicles on the playground type events, just those fun things, just to kind of, you know, get on parents' radars because everybody's so busy right now. They may get a flyer 3 weeks ago and then forget about it 2 days later. And then the day of or after the event, you're like, oh man, I totally forgot about that event we had a flyer for. So I think there's more versatile ways to kind of let your community know that there are events coming. Traditional flyers are still fine. You know, we still send out an email every week to our families with a list of flyers from the community. And sometimes we have our own flyers that we put in there. Some of them we send home with our students, but I think the a flyer itself is pretty limiting as to what it can what it can do. So I prefer other methods, like I said, the Facebook events, emails home to parents, posts on websites that can be shared. I like that route more than the static PDF flyer.
Yeah, I agree. And when we're talking social media, since this is, we're going to get into some more social media stuff, but I'll post a flyer, but then sometimes people want it like posted. Can you post this? Well, they want it every day for 5 days or something. It's like, no, I can't
Right.
do that. But I can do share a video of your kids talking about this awesome fundraiser that they're working on, or, you know, a photo of the kids doing something, or, you know, so there's just a lot of different ways to get it out there. And I love your idea of the Facebook events and then direct email and website and all of that has to combine. It can't just be a social media or it can't just be a flyer. But those are some great tips, especially now we're coming into the holiday season. You know, there's going to be concerts and all of the things. Just kind of thinking outside of the box. So that's good stuff. So John, tell me about how social media fits into your role because you have a big district. I mean, not huge, but 2500. You got 6 different campuses. So like what social media channels are you responsible for? And kind of how does that all work?
So I am mainly responsible for the big three, you know, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Yeah.
Facebook is our largest, as is typical with most. We have about I think it's 33 or 3,800 follows, 3,000 likes, and that's almost doubled since the time I took over. So I'm really proud about that. Um, and that's where you know a lot. That's like I said, our most engagements at. Instagram is probably our fastest growing medium, and that I put into place when I started, and that's up around 950 right now. And those are like everybody else, your younger parents and your students. Twitter, we
Mhm.
don't do a ton of engagement on. That is mainly a source for like our sports teams. I know that that's really kind of like where media will follow us. Like if they need a score on Friday nights or something, they'll often tag that account. Um, that I can get the attention of some statewide media that way. A lot of our local media, I'm able to email and get a pretty good response. But some of the bigger stories, I'll sometimes tag, you know, kind of the state people to kind of elevate it a little bit. But Facebook is kind of where I put all my efforts. And right now, I'm kind of dabbling a little bit more with Instagram. I'm learning more about it. I don't use it as much myself, so that's kind of a barrier. So I'm trying to get a little bit more. I'm trying to. So far, I haven't identified any students that might be able to help me there. I know that's a tip that you and others have offered as well. But I threw out an Instagram reel last week or so, and the engagement it did was unbelievable. So I'm gonna find a
Yeah.
way to get some more Instagram reels going because that I was like shocked at the engagement level that one little video did.
Yeah, you said you have under 1,000 followers. Do you know how many people that little video reached?
I off the top of my head I don't. I think it was like
Okay.
2,500, 3,000. It was
Yeah.
yeah, it was easily three or four times our follower base.
Yeah, and that's what we've been seeing with school. So I'm so proud of you for trying, John. And the best
Thanks.
is I love it really when the stuff I say to try actually does work, right? But of course I
Absolutely.
do I'm doing social media every day for schools as well. And so I wouldn't pass on stuff that didn't work. Okay, so we're gonna link up all of your channels. So for Winona schools, we're gonna have the Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. It's waiting for you in the show notes so you guys can check it out. You can check out what John did for his first Instagram reel. It's all there. How do you get content, John? You know, you've got all of hundreds of staff members and these different campuses. How are you getting content to put out on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter?
So some of it is just myself like dropping by certain things. If I don't have anything to
Okay.
do for a day, I know a principal is not too stressed, I'll say, "Hey, can I drop by your building? Is anything going on?" Otherwise, we are each of our buildings kind of operates their own Facebook page.
Okay.
So our elementaries are probably the most active on that. And I know there's probably conflicting thoughts on, especially for a district our size, do you want one Facebook page or do you want each building to have their own? And my personal philosophy is I like that the principals are thinking about what can I post to Facebook. So I feel if
Hmm.
I take that power, I guess, away from them, they may no longer think about that. And the
Sure.
things that they post on their Facebook page are kind of more useful to their families only. So it's a
Hmm.
lot of like PTA events coming up, a lot of like reminders for different things. They reshare a lot of like their teacher pages or whatever. So I want to encourage that because I can just steal content off that website or off their pages all the time, which is kind of what I do. And a lot of the elementaries do similar things, like we all do different rewards for best lunchroom behavior or positive office referral. So anytime I can, I like to take one or two photos from each elementary school and do a combined post and say, these students were called to the principal's office for a positive reason this week, and then show the smiling students with their little badge or flyer, whatever they got. So that's one way I get content. And we also have staff see the value of positive messaging on social media. And I think I've proven that to them since I've started. So I will get emails from staff all the time with photos. And I haven't even had to send out a reminder yet this year. And every time I think about, maybe I should send out a reminder, I haven't gotten anything in a while, I'll have 4 or 5 emails in my inbox the next day saying, "Hey, can you share this? This happened in our classroom. What do you think about this?" Um, so it's really great. It makes my job a lot easier. And I know that there were times, when I first started where I'm like, man, I'm really dry for content right now. Can I send out this email to kind of kickstart, these submissions? And so I've done that in the past. So if you're looking for content out there, I would suggest, sending an email, even if it's just a group of 10, 15 teachers that and say, hey, is there anything going on in your school right now? Um, Please do that. I know you, Andrea, you've shared a lot of great resources as far as how you should take photos or whatnot, or what message, how you should ask your staff for photos. So I just send them the links to that, and just say, hey, can you send us something? It doesn't have to be anything special. It doesn't need to be this great project. It could literally just be a kid writing on the chalkboard, or we don't have
Right.
chalkboards anymore, but the dry erase board, because parents love seeing their kids on social media. So I would
Yeah.
really encourage anybody to do that.
Yeah, what are you learning this week? Like, what's going on in your classroom this week? There's obviously something going on. It's not nothing. It's just snap a picture of it, and that can be a great thing to share. Um, I love it. So you're right. I mean, 2,500 students isn't huge, but I'm glad you
Mhm.
shared your philosophy on social media. Do you get are most of the schools doing a pretty good job of sharing content on their Facebook pages?
They are. They're doing a great job. And like I said, we have teachers that kind of have their own little Facebook pages too. Um, at some points, I may, try to corral all that different stuff right now and kind of set some standards and some expectations. But like I said, I don't want to stifle any of that inkling to share photos publicly. So at some point, that'll be on my wish list down the road to say, here's some best practices if you're going to operate your own Facebook page. Make sure you're posting at least once a week, preferably more than that. Here's some photo tips. So get close, get low, all those other things. So really, they do a great job of sharing that. So I
Yeah.
am totally fine with letting them kind of run free on their own. And I have admin rights for all of those pages too. So if something really goes crazy, at night, or if the principal's away, I can kind of step in and clear up some of those things. If a student's name is spelled wrong or there's a really weird comment or something, I'm able to help out for things like that.
Okay, sure. And when you go to share district worthy stuff, you're not probably going to share a PTA event or something that just pertains to one school. That's kind of a reminder. You're
Mhm.
celebrating the things that are happening. Are you sharing those posts on your district page, or do you kind of repost those, or how do you do that?
So I just re-download the photos and have a new post, because like I said, I like to combine posts. So like our PTAs all held fundraisers this fall. So I will take photos from each one and try to share it in one post, saying like, here's all the money that our elementary PTAs raise with their special events. Um, and the reason I do that is because I mean it's proven, and you've said it and others have said it, that you get more engagement with original posts versus shares. And
Right.
I've only had one. I think one teacher kind of asked why I don't just share their post and do a new one, and that's what I say. It's like our goal here is to increase engagement. So when we do have messages that we really want parents to see or the community to see, we will get on their news feed more often than not. So rather than just reshare it, I will try to make my own post.
Yeah.
And
And
I
you might
also
word things a
sometimes,
little bit
yeah,
differently.
yeah, exactly. You reword things. I tend to edit photos a lot too. Like I like to crop photos. There's a lot, and it's human nature to take a photo with a lot of blank space, because sometimes if you're a principal, you're doing three things at once while taking the photo. You may have a student by your side who needs to be calmed down. You may be dealing with a teacher or something, and then you're just trying to snap a photo. So you may not frame it just right, but I like the business suite on Facebook is awesome for that. I really like the ease of using the business suite, and just the way that you can see how different crops look before you apply them. I really like that.
Yeah. That's great. And that's a great tip. And not to say that you can't ever share posts. I mean, you can always tag the original page that it came from if you want to kind of give them some credit. But you're right. A post on your district's page is going to reach a whole lot more people if it's an organic, original post than something that you shared from another page. And ultimately, you probably have a lot more followers on your district page than that individual school page or that teacher page would have. And so that's really going to help you. Um, Good stuff. So, do you try with your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram? I think you kind of talked about it a little bit already. Twitter's maybe not as popular, but you're able to tag some outlets. So, are you trying to reach different audiences on your different platforms?
Yeah, yes, but really, I just kind of right now I'm kind of just trying to reach as many people as I can. So
Yeah.
I at some point I would like to say this post is more tailored for Facebook, this post is more tailored for Instagram. I'm not quite there. I don't feel like I have enough content right now to necessarily do that. At some point I'd love, Instagram, the strategy on Instagram to feature just great photos, and then any announcement type things to kind of sell to do in Instagram stories, or I know just recently Instagram now you can post links in your stories, which is huge.
Hmm.
So I think there's a strategy that I need to come up with there. But right now, pretty much what I'm sharing to Facebook is pretty close to what I'm sharing on Instagram. And
Yeah.
I know that's not always recommended, but right now that's just kind of where I am at. Um, yeah, so I would love to get more male followers, and I don't know which medium is the best for that. Right, I just checked our my insights when I was preparing for the show, and On Instagram, we're like 85-15 female to male. On Facebook, it's like 80-20. So I don't know where the men are, but
That's a
they
yeah,
they really aren't out
that's a
there.
great question. And some of our schools are starting to use LinkedIn because actually there's more men on LinkedIn. And so that might be another option. But your percentages don't sound too far off from a lot of what we see as well. So, and
Yeah,
of
and
course,
that's kind of what I've yeah that's what I've gathered, and I get it, but it would be nice to have a little bit more balance in there. But I'm sure others are kind of facing the same thing.
right, yeah, and there's I think probably an even mix out there on YouTube. So if you are putting any videos out there, um, but just in regards to reaching certain people on certain channels, I don't think there's anything wrong with putting similar content on all three channels because of the algorithm and how much noise there is and competition to get in people's news feed. Like the chances of them seeing it in all three places, if they happen to be following your school on all three places, is not very great. So don't be afraid of that. And yes, there are some differences in Instagram stories. You may be sharing things more geared towards the students or whatever than necessarily on Facebook, maybe. But it's okay. They don't have to be totally different. So that's good insight. You've had some success with getting social media content from families. So can you tell me a little bit about those efforts that you've had?
Yeah, so really, I kind of understood the power and the possibilities of this at the beginning of COVID. And right when we went into distance learning and we were all in our homes, I really thought that we needed something to kind of unify us as a district in a way. So we're our mascot's name is Herky. We're the Windhawk. So Herky the Windhawk is our mascot. So, and kids identify with Herky. We use them in our elementary, PBIS is our behavior kind of alignments that we have across all of our elementaries. And they have what's called Herky's code. And we do, the old school Herky mascot logo we use a lot in elementary. So basically, I just said, Herky wants to see your distance learning setup. And so I kind of just threw it out on Facebook. I didn't even send it to parents or anything. Just threw it out, say, send Herky your distance learning Facebook. He wants to see his friends. He misses his friends. And then I think I asked a couple questions in the form. And I just used the form. We use Final Sites. I'm a huge fan of Final Sites. And their form manager is really great to use. And parents could upload a photo. And I was hoping maybe we would get 5 or 6 photos just to get us through the week, because at this point we had gotten all of our distance learning plans and everything, and I'm like, I do not know what to do. Like, I'm sitting here with nothing to do. I can't go anywhere. So I can provide support, but I really don't know what to put on social media. And we got 70 responses from that, and I was just blown away by the response. And some of the photos were great. I mean, some of them are typical parent photos. The thumb is kind of sticking in the part of the photo, the light's all bad, but some of them are just beautiful photos. So not only did I have photos to use on social media and messaging, and it really did kind of unify us, I believe, for that first few weeks that we were doing distance learning. But it also gave me photos to use on our website, when we had to send out messages in the future. It just really kind of freshened up the photo galleries that I had at my disposal. But so then I'm like, dang, our families really like seeing their kids on social media, and so I went back to it several times. But it's been great.
That's awesome. So let's link to that initial request maybe if we can in the show notes. So let's
Sure. Yep.
get that post from you afterwards. And how do you spell herky? That's my question.
Herky.
Okay, that's
So
how I
yeah,
spelled it on my notes. But if I'm going to get to know Herky the Windhawk, I love that too. If anybody has a mascot, if you're ever asking for, you want to see something, then Herky's asking for it, right? Your mascot's asking for it. You're not.
yep,
Um, so
yep.
that's pretty fun. But I love it, and that's great response. And of course, if you've got some kind of a form, sometimes people ask for stuff in emails or to comment below, and they can insert pictures. You can do it right through Final Site. You could do it through a Google form. But that's awesome. And then you've been able to do it with some other, what kind of other times
Yeah.
have you asked for parents for photos?
Yeah, so another time was a few weeks after we did the original distance learning photo push. And that was at the time when, people in New York and other cities were going on their balconies at a certain time and like saluting the healthcare workers. So I thought, we have a lot of people who are associated with our school district kind of, rising to the occasion right now. So I thought, well, let's have Herky's Heroes, and then people could send in, hey, my dad is a police officer, or this graduate is working in the ER units, dealing with, helping with COVID or whatnot. So I just kind of said, send in your Herky's Heroes with the idea that maybe every other night or so at 8 o'clock, we would post today's Herky's Hero with the reason, with their photo and the reason why they were nominated. And again, I was kind of blown away by the response. We got more than 50. So for almost 2 months during the week, every night at 8 o'clock, we had a different Herky's Hero. So they were, both students, families. So we had students like working at grocery stores that we would salute. There was one who was actually through a program with our chamber. He was an intern for the hospital, and he ended up helping work in the COVID unit at our hospital. So we got to celebrate him. There were students making masks. There were grandparents coming out of retirements to work, at nursing homes because they needed staff, and it was just really great. I thought it was great, and as a
Yeah.
way to celebrate our families during a time where there wasn't much to celebrate because there wasn't anything going on in the schools. So again, that was another example that, hey, people, want to be celebrated and they want to see their friends and family celebrated as well.
Yeah. We had to get really creative, and that's the journalist in you. You know, there's those
Yes.
stories are out there. You were able to
Yeah.
discover them, so I love it.
Yeah.
We
And
are like,
the,
oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just going to add another one. Just, first day of school photos is such an easy one to do.
Right.
And this past year we did it. We had more than 100 photos of
Awesome.
kids, in their first day. And yeah, so that was awesome to do. We had, teacher appreciation week. I said, send a note card to your favorite teacher. So people would write a quick thank you note, add a photo, and then I kind of designed something in Canva that looked like a little postcard, to send to the teachers. So I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, just the desire of families to see their positive news celebrated on social media. I think you might be surprised if you ask your families to help out. You'll be surprised at how many are willing to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we're we're running up against the end of our time together, but I want to hit on this because I recently shared an article on how to deal with those, community gossip groups out on social media. And John, you kind of shared a different approach than I would suggest. So, can you share what you did with those community gossip groups and how it worked for you?
Yeah, so I remember when, we were talking about me being able to come on, and I mentioned this is one thing I want to talk about, and then the next day I think you came out with that. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's not going to have me on now. But yeah, so for about 99.9%, I agree with that blog post that you had. I think that's great advice. I don't think you should sign up for those gossip groups to shoot down every single rumor that's out there, or every single complaint, or the bus was late, the school district doesn't know what it's doing with busing or whatever. That's not worth anybody's time, and all the avenues you offered were great, great to follow. But mine was, again, during COVID at the beginning of the 2020-2021 school year, when we started in a hybrid for all. I was just worried about people running with bad information, because we had one Facebook page that kind of became the primary news source for almost everybody in the community versus this is what this business is doing for their regulations. And it kind of became, even if you could go to that business's website and find out, no, this wasn't true, that kind of became the standard narrative, I think. And I kind of saw it in my own social circle. So I was a little bit worried that people were going to run with bad info. So my solution was I just need to flood as many places as I can with just information. So I even said when our school board decided what learning model they were going to go with, I went to this group and said, I'm not here to debate the decision. I'm here to answer questions. And if I can't find the question, can't find the answer to the question, or if I can't answer the question, I will find it. I find out for you. And I think people really responded positively to that because we had so many. It was such a unique, everybody who's listening to this knows, it was such a unique school year. There was nothing that was normal about it. We had
Mhm.
hybrid groups. People were wondering, well, we're in a split family, or my kids have different last names. Are they going to be in the same group, or are they going to be in different groups? And people have bad info about that. How's busing going to work? How do I choose distance learning? And they just had all these different questions. And if they weren't getting them, somebody would supply the answer sometimes, and it wasn't always right. So I think, I felt empowered to do this by the superintendent and the administrative team. I'm really fortunate to not only have a seat at the table, but also a voice in the district, which is really nice for somebody in my position. I also felt comfortable dealing with the public because my previous job was the editor of the local newspaper. So I know how crazy some people can get. And I also know a lot of times people just want to be heard. They just want somebody to unload on for a minute and then they feel better. Or they just want to know that there's another human out there too. So I think that's the one thing that was really kind of comforting to some people was there was an actual human who was feeling a lot of the same things that they were, who was confused just as they were, and was there to kind of answer their questions if they needed to.
So you took a really proactive approach and made the post yourself and said, "Okay, here's the information. What questions do you have? Because I work for the district, and if I don't have the answer, I'm going to try to work it for you." So you really turned that to a positive rather than going and responding to every single complaint or misinformation within the group. You kind of consolidated it to that one spot. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's right. And
Okay,
if
good.
there may have been one where there was a post that somebody had already started, and I just jumped in the comments and said, "I work for the district. I'm not going to debate, but I can answer."
Okay.
Um, so I think staff really appreciated that too, because I think, I spent some of the summer kind of trying challenging staff to kind of be that person for somebody in the district who needed questions answered.
Mhm.
So I thought, why can't I be that person for somebody else too? So there were a few people that, it wasn't just that in August, it was throughout the school year that if they needed something answered, they kind of reached out to me about it. So I kind of felt like I was kind of, walking the walk a little bit when I was, challenging staff members to kind of do that for their families or for their students' families, that I was willing to do it myself. So, but again,
Yeah.
I felt comfortable doing that. I felt empowered to do it, and I know not everybody's in the same exact situation, but I was worried that we were going to be bleeding students because they had wrong information. And I
Right.
think, we have a lot of different options for students in Winona. We have a few charter schools, a private school. People were fleeing the, those online schools as well. I think it's totally fine to choose whatever school you want for your child. That's a very personal choice. My hope is that you just do it for the right reasons. So I was worried about families leaving with bad information, and I just wanted to make sure that wasn't the case. So that was kind of the reason why I did that. I'll be honest, for my mental health, it probably wasn't good at times. There were some pretty tough decisions we had to make, not just then, but throughout the school year. Um,
Mhm.
we had to go to distance learning for all grades in November, and that was tough.
Mhm.
So just hearing the blowback from that was pretty tough, and I still get. Facebook does a great job of reminding you, a year or two ago, like the post that you had, and man, my anxiety rises when I see some of those some of those reminders. But I think in overall, it was my obligation to the school district to kind of do everything I could to kind of help communicate the reasons why we were doing things to our families, and I felt in that moment that that was appropriate. But I know not everybody, the experience isn't going to be the same for everybody. And I also wouldn't recommend you do this all the time
Right.
because it is not sustainable. It's not a good use of your time. But in situations like this where nothing was normal, I think I would, if you can, I would encourage you to kind of step outside of your comfort zone a little bit and see if you can serve your school district in that way.
Yeah. Well, I love listening to you talk, John, and I just think you're such a blessing for your school district because you do everything out of, wanting to serve others and get them the right information,
Mhm.
and that goes a long way. And that's hopefully how everybody in school communications looks at it. And I also love that you have a seat at the table, where you can be heard and kind of, empowered, to make a difference. So that's great. So what's the best social media tip that you would want to share with our listeners as we wrap up?
So mine is it's okay to step away. It's okay to not have a post at that time. I like to have 3 or 4 posts a day. I follow the kind of the times that you've laid out for early morning, lunchtime, pickup, nighttime. I try to aim for those at least the early morning and late night. However, for my own sanity, there are times where I just kind of say I'm not going to be able to have a post this afternoon. There might be a full day where I don't, and that was difficult for me coming from newspapers where I was the editor of a 7 day a week newspaper. So we had to come out with something every single day. It doesn't matter how hard you work the day before or how little you had to work the day before. You always had to do something the very next day. So that was kind of eye opening for me to realize you don't have to do something if there's nothing there, or if you need to take care of yourself, or if something else comes up, go do that. You don't have to post everything. So that would be my tip, is just to say it's okay to not have a post at 4 o'clock on Friday or 6 a.m. on Friday if you have something else going on.
Yeah, I sometimes get anxiety about that too. Like, oh my gosh, but guess what? They have a lot of other things to look at on Facebook. So, yes, you want to show up, but they're not going to be like, oh my gosh, why isn't there something there? Right? You're the only one that's probably going to realize. So that's good advice. So, John, like all my listeners are going to be like, I want to hang out more with John because he has a lot of really helpful things. Obviously, you can follow his social channels, but what's the best way to stay connected to you?
If I'm on Twitter at John Casper Jr. If you want to follow me there, usually we're coming up on basketball season, so I'm just going to be complaining about Marquette basketball usually coming up. I'm a Marquette grad, so um, but yeah, I like to participate in the K-12 PR chats and everything like that. And I'd also encourage people to follow our school district, Winona Schools, on Facebook and Instagram. I love following other school districts because I get ideas. The admire and acquire mindset. So I'd encourage you to do that. But yeah, feel free to follow me on Twitter or email me. We can put my email in the show notes, and I'd love to answer any questions that you may have.
Awesome. Well, my connection is getting bad, and I'm not sure if it's bad right now for everybody else, but we are wrapping up. It's probably like Squadcast saying, "Hey, you're at 40 minutes. We gotta jump off." But John, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much. You've given everybody a lot to think about, and we'll post some of those example posts. Again, you can follow all his channels there. Everybody stay well. John is a great member of our membership group as well, so he gets support there. So if you're thinking about joining us, you can hang out with John more inside of that as well. But keep telling those stories, everybody. We will see you next time. Bye, John.